Democratic in Manhattan no matter what's going on. So you cannot use that as a guide for like what's going on in the election. And I own property in Texas, and I go back and forth. And there are people in like Middle America, you cannot find one Hillary supporter anywhere. And there's parts of Manhattan you can't find one Trump supporter. You know, the U.S. is actually split into these two completely different societies. And that split is like getting bigger and bigger. And this is also extremely dangerous. And it will still exist no matter who wins. I mean, the mainstream media think, oh, Trump loses, he's going away, and that's it. And he excited all these people, and if he hadn't been there, they wouldn't be bothered. No, that's not true. They were bothered already, and he simply opened Pandora's box, but Pandora's box was already there. And someone else, if he goes away, someone else. Don't ask me who, I don't know. So, as I said, Trump's candidacy is anti-globalist, and this exists in Europe. There's anti-globalist parties in almost every country. And in the last European Parliament election, a number of countries, they came in one or two, and Brexit was like the really big breakthrough that like, hey, we're sick of globalism. And this even exists in Asia to some extent, with Modi in India and Duterte, whatever his name is in the Philippines. I can't pronounce that. It should be Spanish, but it's like kind of wrong. There's like the letters don't quite match. So it's quite possible neither candidate is going to have a mandate. Someone is going to have to win by several percent. They don't, then it's like, people go like, I don't believe. As I said, the polls cannot be trusted. I used to be a pollster. I used to be a political consultant years ago. So like, I know what a proper poll is and what should be done. And so do everyone who's getting paid to do a poll knows this too. So if they are producing crappy polls, they know they are producing crappy polls. It is not like an accident, oh, we didn't know, oh, you know, everything changed. No, that's not what's happening. They're purposely doing this. And it was blatant in Brexit. And I would say, like, in defense, like, if you go back to 1948 with the famous Truman-Dewey race, they said the polls were all wrong. They were not, if you go and analyze them. They actually stopped polling before the election, like 2-3 weeks. And you could see that there was actually some trending, even they existed, toward Truman. And if they had kept polling, they probably would have seen Truman was winning at the end, but they were so convinced he lost that they didn't bother to do that. And the same thing happened with Reagan. Reagan was a huge surprise in 1980. If you actually go back in the very last polls, Reagan was ahead in the polls, and they trended, and he actually was winning. But like, no one reported it, no one believed it, but the polls actually were correct. You're not getting this time. The best you're going, my guess is like the polls are going to say Hillary Clinton wins toward the end, no matter what. We'll watch for trending, however. If you're going to get any honesty, it will be the last poll taken. Because the way pollsters advertise their services, they will say, well, you know, this is how close we were in the last poll we took. And they, you know, they forget they were 20 points off on the early polls. So they will try to be honest in the very last poll. And that may be 1 or 2 days before the election. So like, watch what's happening 1 or 2 days before the election. And if you see movement in any direction, that you can say, okay, movement is taking place for either Hillary or for Trump. So you watch that. Meanwhile, okay, I would say like Clinton, if they took the whole universe in the United States, Clinton would be ahead. Except only about 50% of people vote. And she has turnout. As I say, she has turnout problems. The weakest two sectors right now, and traditionally weak two sectors, are voters under 30. They tend to be very poor voters, and African Americans, who used to be poor voters, but when Obama came along, they became very good voters. And in the last election in 2012, African Americans actually outvoted white people percentage-wise, in percentage turnout, not in absolute numbers. So like, so this is very eyebrow-raising and unusual. And it's an indication that Obama had very great appeal to this group, and Romney had very poor appeal among white voters. And yeah, white voters in generally are somewhat more Republican, and African Americans are completely Democratic. So Hillary has trouble in both these groups. These are strong supporters. Obama won them both by huge amounts. The under 30s, he won 2-1 in the first election. African Americans, he won with 96% of the vote. So like a lower vote, especially a substantially lower vote, will hurt her tremendously. And Obama only won the last election by 3%. So there's only 3% leeway. So if the turnout falls enough, then she will be finished. Probably. Now, let's see what happens next. Okay, let's look at some of these polls. I've seen huge numbers of crappy polls, and I'll throw in some other examples. I just looked at Real Clear Politics. They have those lists. When I wrote this out, just this morning, I did this, and picked out 3 polls that where Hillary Clinton looked like she was too far ahead. So there's one poll, and these are recent polls. They're from the last few days. In Virginia, she's a poll, she's 12 points ahead. And it's taken by some place called Christopher Newport University, which I have never, ever heard of. And I used to be in academia, so I know lots of colleges. Now, 12 points ahead is just way, way too much. So the first problem with the sample I found, college grads were 60% of the sample. Now, in Virginia, it's actually 35%. So, and Hillary Clinton is very strong among college graduates. So if you like double that number in the poll, she's going to be doing really, really well. So, I mean, you can actually go back and calculate, and there's actually some guy on Twitter who tweets who does this. He redoes the samples based on what the real numbers should be and adjusts them and comes up with different numbers. So, like, you know, I haven't analyzed his work, so I know how good it is. So, in reality, you could probably say maybe she's 3 points ahead, maybe she's 2 points ahead. You know, I haven't done the math, but it's actually very close. Not 12 points. And this is published by Real Clear. They publish these one crappy poll after another, and then they average the polls and say, oh, you know, Hillary Clinton is this far ahead on average. But there's no filter of like, here's a really crappy poll, we can't believe this. So you can't believe those averages. Now, okay, then I looked at Arizona, there was all this news. Oh, Arizona, they're a very Republican state. It has voted Democratic only once for president since 1950. So, and it's always, oh, Hillary Clinton's going to win. Oh, she's ahead of 5 points. I saw so many news articles. So here's a poll, the Arizona Republic, Morrison Cronkite. Arizona Republic's a newspaper. Never heard of this poll either.
Oh, thank you.
And in this poll, the education sample, college grads 57%. Actual in Arizona 26. So this really doubly oversample, more than doubly oversample a group Hillary Clinton's very strong. And still only came out 5 points. Even worse, they had a party breakdown. It was 44% Democratic. And in the actual registration, as of like today or yesterday, in Arizona, it's 30%. So they oversampled Democrats by 14%. And Hillary Clinton's only 5 points ahead. She should be 14 points ahead. This is an indication she's really behind. And except you will not see this in any news article. You say, oh, she's ahead, and the Democrats might win Arizona, Trump is finished. You know, BS, 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 BS. And like, okay, then I just picked out these 3 polls at random, by the way. I didn't do some extensive study that took hours. It took like a couple of minutes. North Carolina, Hillary Clinton, 7 points ahead. Some poll called the New York Times Upshot Siena poll. Now, it's written so it looks like it says New York Times. It is not the New York Times. So, and people just glancing quickly say, oh, well, the New York Times said this. No, they did not. So, just that immediately, you said, there's something that's suspicious about this poll. They're being a little, like, crooked here. Now, college grads, 46%. Actual number should be 27, so they oversample it. My interpretation of this is North Carolina is actually 50-50. They're probably like absolutely even. Not Hillary Clinton's not 7 points in. And so it's really going to be hard to figure out who wins North Carolina. Although ultimately I think Trump. Now let's go to the ground game. There was actually a few days ago, this week, there were 2 rallies in Florida on the same day. Hillary Clinton's VP was on one side of Florida. Trump was on the other side. So Kaine had 30 people show up at his rally. Trump, on the other side, had 20,000 people at almost the same moment. And there was a poll before this, there's a poll, Clinton was 9 points ahead. And like the visuals don't match this. You know, if she's so popular, it's Kane, and then Pence goes in rallies too. He draws huge numbers of people around the country. And you know, these are actually Hillary Clinton rallies, these pictures, not her repick. And she went to Temple University in Philadelphia, which has 40,000 students and staff. 400 people showed up to that rally. People wouldn't even cross the street to go hear her speak. And they said, oh, she's winning, she's way ahead. These Trump rallies look like, you know, Grand Central Station at rush hour. So like you look at this and say, well, you know, there's no support that she has all this support. So that should raise an eyebrow or two. It is possible to have a lot more people show up at rallies and still lose, though. So it can happen, but it does. It should actually put questions in your mind. And people don't just go to these Trump rallies. They sometimes drive 200 miles. They wait in line for like 8 hours. So like they make a big effort to see him, and people make no effort to see Overflow. So the other thing you have to realize, the person who gets the most votes does not necessarily win the election. And we saw that with the Gore-Bush race, and that actually happened 3 other times in American history. And I try to explain the Electoral College to foreigners, and usually I can't do it. You know, I try, and they just don't get it. They say, well, they get the most votes. I said, no, it's the most votes. They don't know what an electoral vote is. They just can't get the idea. So, like, you know, basically we vote by state, and whoever wins the state gets the most votes, and then whoever gets the most of those votes wins. So it is possible for someone to even win the popular vote by 3 or 4% and lose the presidency. And there is some danger of actually, Hillary is in much more danger of this than Trump. And the reason is her support is extremely concentrated. It might be like, just like I said, she could win Manhattan by 80-something% of the vote, just like Gore did. And you know, in inner cities, basically cities in the East Coast, West Coast, Chicago. So, but then when you go to Middle America, the support is extremely thin. And that's where like Trump could actually win a huge number of states by a couple of %, and then wind up with more electoral votes. And then Hillary is winning New York and California by 25% or something. So like you don't want concentrated votes, you want your support to be spread out across the country. So in her, support tends to be extremely concentrated. So that's a negative for her. So it is possible, there are scenarios where both candidates get the same number of electoral votes. And if that it's not likely, so don't go and bet on the horses. Who's the betting guy that was over here? Okay, don't. You know, it could happen, there are scenarios. And what happens then, it goes into the House of Representatives. And that's a really bizarre process. And that has not happened since the very early 1800s. And you know, popular voting really only started in 1824, so it happened before that. But apparently they vote by state, not individual congressmen. So it's actually a complicated process. Now, so if that happened, it'd be total chaos. Total chaos. And then you have the other scenario, you also have the, you have the possibility of Clinton can win the popular vote and Trump the electoral vote. So, I mean, this is a reality based on how the distribution of supporters goes. And you also have the possibility the election could wind up in court. Now, in Gore-Bush, it was in court for a month. So this will, like, the stock market, if it saw this, would be really, really unhappy. The stock market does not like uncertainty, and it does not like surprises. Now, and what happened with Brexit, like all of the polls say, oh, Brexit's going to fail, it's going to be horrible. You know, so like the market, stocks were rallying, the pound was rallying. The pound sold up 10% that night, which for a currency is an enormous, enormous percentage. Much worse than for stocks. That's maybe like the stock market selling off 25% in one night. So if Trump won, let's see, before we get to Trump won, this is how I see the most likely map right now. I assume Trump will get all the states that Romney got. Romney was like a relatively unappealing candidate, unexciting. A lot of people, the base vote actually went down for him, which is like not a good sign. So he had a long, the libertarians completely deserted him. because they treated Ron Paul like crap at the convention. I actually know a lot of libertarians, not one of them voted for Romney. They wouldn't even consider it. So like he lost like parts of the Republican base. He also had zero appeal to the Reagan Democrats. Now if you're too young, which some people in this group are, maybe not you, but what happened in the Reagan race, lots of Democrats, conservative working class Democrats, voted for Reagan. And those people don't really exist here. You know, in New York, Long Island, the suburbs, you know, most Democrats are very liberal and Republicans are conservative. In the rest of other parts of America, this is not true. And that's particularly not true in this area and parts of the Midwest. There is still a working class Democratic base. And there was an article in the Times, they went to Southeast Pennsylvania, and they're interviewing Democrats, and they couldn't find any Hillary supporters. And they run into the local Democratic Assemblywoman, and she's handing out her, vote for me, vote for my re-election, and the two things on the top of her literature are like, proud member of the NRA and 100% pro-life. Now, you won't find any Democrats in the New York area that have those positions. So these Democrats are really conservative Democrats. And they don't like Hillary. Hillary has like no appeal to them. And Trump is like perfect for them. And this whole area is coal country also. And Hillary actually went to Pennsylvania and said, I'm going to close down coal companies and unemploy coal workers. That was not wise. And so, like, and West Virginia, if you look at it, is solidly Republican. West Virginia used to be one of the most solidly Democratic states to about 20 years ago or thereabouts. It even voted for Carter. It even voted for Carter in 1980 over Reagan, only one of 6 states. It voted for Dukakis. It voted for, almost no state, 10 states voted for Dukakis. Then it switched. The Democrats started a war on coal. And West Virginia is the coal central, basically. So it switched within a few years from being 2-to-1 Democratic to being 2-to-1 Republican. And there's now, it was once a guaranteed Democratic state, it's now a guaranteed Republican state. Now, this area of Pennsylvania is actually doing the same thing, only later on. These are the conservative Democrats that are very similar to us, and this area of Ohio also. So all of this is going to impact the presidential election. This is what has put Pennsylvania in play, even though it's voted Democratic for the last umpteen years. It's almost always reliably Democratic. So I'm taking all of Romney's states and adding, I think Trump has definitely added Ohio and Iowa. So that's still not enough for him to win. So these gray states are the other ones that are most up for grabs. So it looks like a poll came out like yesterday, he was 2 points ahead in Florida, so he really needs to win. Florida he definitely needs to win, and he has a very good chance of winning if he wins Florida, but not guaranteed. So if he won all these states, he would definitely, all these gray states, he would definitely win. Now there's also some possibility. Virginia, as everyone's ignoring, but as I said, that poll was really quite phony, and they should not be ignoring. And Michigan is actually demographically extremely similar to Ohio. So if Trump wins Ohio by a lot, it doesn't make sense he loses Michigan. It's just illogical. You know, the Democratic base is conservative working class Democrats, not liberals. So, and Wisconsin has that to some extent, and even Minnesota. And actually Minnesota is the most reliably Democratic state. It has voted Democratic every time since after the 72 election. It's the only state. And they've some Hillary people have actually been showing up there campaigning, so that's sort of like very eyebrow raising. So, and it's demographics are somewhat similar to Ohio and Michigan. So we will have to see what happens. North Carolina could go the other way. It's probably extremely close. Nevada is definitely very, very close. So is Colorado. So is Pennsylvania. I can see Pennsylvania being decided by 50,000 votes one way or the other. So is that close?
You need a lot of dead people.
Well, that's in many states. That's in many states. Well, there actually were accusations. Newt Gingrich was on some TV show the other day. I don't have a TV. I see these things on the internet. And he mentioned, like they said, how can you say this voter fraud? They said, well, we know there were irregularities in East St. Louis, and I actually found that